substance equals spin. The propaganda's a win, stress feeding on my tension. My countrymen, they love their fiction. Words are now, it's made with good intentions.
Welcome to 1 or 200, the Media and Politics podcast. We're here for another weekend of current events. I'm joined by my co-host Simone. How are you doing? Are you alive?
I'm so sick, Kyle. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and I hate life and myself.
Perfect podcasting form. Wonderful to have you here.
I'm mad and I'm red and nude, or whatever it is.
And also joined by Ollie. How are you doing?
Kia ora. I'm actually doing pretty good. I woke up at 5:32, but that's kind of par for the course when you got little ones. So I'm feeling normal, insanely normal, which is generally tired.
And I'm just a chaos agent. I'm here to create problems and derail the entire thing. So we've got the full spread of podcast hosts this morning. Starting off with the incredibly belated announcement by the UN investigative body calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide, which we already knew. We've known for since 2023, right? Like when the main categorization of what was happening was met by Israel saying they're going to do a genocide.
Yeah, Yoav Gallant and Netanyahu saying, we are going to commit a genocide. We're excited to do it. We're going to kill every man, woman, and child. And for some reason, for years, people just had to be like, well, yeah, they might have said that, but there's important context around that.
Yeah, and I guess
it's actually forbidden to click translate on a Hebrew tweet.
Yeah.
It's Hamas to do that. It's been particularly ludicrous because the intent argument is also how a lot of the major media organizations, a lot of the main institutional bodies, and Western politicians have tried to avoid claiming it's a genocide despite the actions of Israel against Palestinians, which are just described as like being a war or a conflict or a crisis, right? But the intent was actually the first thing to be notified and made it very clear right from the outset that a genocide is what was happening. One of the first things I have seen, though, as a result of this decision, this announcement, is that it looks like Western media are finally put in a position where they have to use the G word, which certainly in the New Zealand context, I don't think it really happened at all.
Yeah, I think there was the initial ruling of plausibility, and I think when that one happened, a few of them dropped it, but they put a lot of padding and framing around it to be like, just to be clear, they're just saying this. It's not really happening. There was a lot of soft pedaling with it. And
we had the RNZ moment where they actually had to apologize and correct themselves because they said that the court had found that Israel wasn't committing a genocide, so they used the incorrect negative, and that was following
and then
them
they pretended
removing...
that was an accident. They did their internal investigation and found no wrongdoing, and
that was after an earlier situation where they'd deleted every mention of the word genocide in an interview with a Palestinian New Zealander. Yeah, not a good look, but it looks like they're all now using it, at least in the last few articles I've seen and the articles reporting on that particular decision. It's not enough. It's not enough, right? Like people who listen to this podcast regularly, we had a midweek episode about the March for Humanity. If you haven't listened to that yet, there's a lot of really good stuff in there about how horribly Western institutions and politicians are failing, and
media. Let's be real, because man, good lord, the bizarre fudging of numbers around that. It's what struck me about that was how just completely petulant it comes across, because we were there. Like anyone who was there could tell you that this was a New Zealand historic level march. The sort of thing that just if you've been going to marches at all over the course of your lifetime, there was nothing like it. I've never seen crowds like that before, and we come away from it and they're like, well, a few hundred according to stuff. It was crazy. I'm sorry, you've probably already gone over that.
At least 100 people. I mean, technically true.
Technically true. There was at least 100 people there.
That's sort of 2 or 3 people there.
Not even necessarily fair. Well, the thing is that media people don't actually see us as human. They just see other reporters as human and also politicians. So, like, you
Well,
know,
in that case, 100 reporters turning out, that's kind of an incredible turnout.
or like other officials. It was, oh, well, cops are people too, according to them. So, you know, and sometimes bullets, which have their own agency.
Yeah.
I don't think they're
The
failing. I mean, they're succeeding in what they want to do, which is genocide, right? I mean, we frame it this way, I think, because it's a way of kind of saying you can come back. Look, what if you did a good job? But I do think that they are geared in a way structurally, which is totally against any sort of interest of preventing this, because the business affairs, or you know, the structural political economic affairs of quote unquote the West, the global North, is inextricably tied to carrying out this genocide.
Yeah, and this is really going to, I guess, make some of the decisions by Western politicians in the last year, particularly around Palestine recognition, just look like the absolute bullshit that they are.
Although Seymour's
Um,
already come out and said, well, no, we're not going to do it. So it's just,
yeah, I mean, and it's even worse
yeah.
here, right? But I'm talking about places like the UK, where Starmer's
Yeah,
trying to
Starmer
drum
suddenly
that
trying to
up,
flip on it.
like
Yeah.
while giving direct military support to Israel to do a genocide. And as we were saying midweek, like, no, you actually just have to sanction them at a minimum. You have to kick out their ambassadors, sanction them, cut them off, like particularly stop giving them military hardware. And honestly, like as far as the Genocide Convention is concerned, there should be a military action to force them to stop if sanctions and other methods do not work. Like countries are required to do that.
And it's funny because people find that concept so shocking. It's like we're so accustomed to excusing and protecting Israel that the idea of taking military intervention is completely unthinkable, despite the fact that we have done that countless times against Eastern European, African, South American states, and usually for much more nefarious reasons. But we in this case, the obviously righteous choice is completely unthinkable to us because Israel, because they're a friendly, for some reason, de facto European nation.
Yeah, well, they're in Eurovision, so
And the Euro Cup, yeah.
Hopefully
I think
not for
I mean
long.
someone sorry, Kyle.
That's it. That's all I had to say.
That's all you had
God,
to
I
say.
got to say, seeing some of the sort of more militant, should we call boycott? I don't know if it's still a boycott at this stage, but like with the
Listen, buddy, I haven't had a hash brown in 2 years, okay?
no. Well, I'm talking about no. Yeah, see, exactly. That's the pretty chill version of it. And like I said, I don't know if you call it a boycott, but just straight up blocking a bicycle race in Spain. And I'm like, yeah, okay, hell yeah. Like we're saying, okay, you're going to let them participate. Actually, I think the fuck not. Like if you're going to let Israel take part in this, then we're just going to stop the event, and we're going to show out in numbers and just make sure that you can't have this event because we're not having these people here. And I was like, great. That's exciting. It's encouraging. It's one of those things where like it's been such a long and frustrating and seemingly fruitless couple of years in terms of advocating in the space that like these little things they suddenly feel like these huge wins when really it's sort of the stuff that we should have been doing from the start.
Yeah, and you see that even with participants, like in Eurovision, you're seeing, you know, singers pull out and say, no, I'm not participating in a competition in which Israel's going to be part of this. So it is
I don't
important to
hate those
see
ones
that.
as much as I hate Eurovision.
It's important to white people
It
in
does seem
Europe.
to be. There's been one good band ever from it, I guess, is ABBA. And since then, it's just Euro trash junk. It's the worst music. But that
That
being
is
said,
insulting to Tommy Cash, the Estonian superstar.
the guy that, yeah, of course. But to me, it's like it's one of those things. It's like I appreciate that you're doing that, but I would way rather that Israel had to leave than that you had to step out and they get to do a little victory lap in the event that you know. So it's in an ideal world, everyone would be on board. You know, we would, and that's what I'm hoping we're going to see a sort of growing movement of. Where they say, no, actually, I don't want to step out of this event and protest. I would like Israel to be actually ejected from it. Because that's the thing. We need that ostracization campaign that was so successful against countries like South Africa, apartheid South Africa.
Yeah, and some of the competitors in the bike race as well were just like, yeah, good on them.
Yeah,
It is really reaching a point, right, in terms of not just the genocide, but Western kind of fascist acceleration, where more and more people are starting to go, wait a second, I'm threatened too, and I actually have influence and power. What's going on here? I should probably say something.
Sometimes they say things with a 308 sniper rifle from the rooftop of a school building.
I mean, we are gonna pivot to this, but it is interesting that like the MSNBC guy, Chris Hayes, or whatever his name is, his reaction to Jimmy Kimmel's firing over literally just having mentioned like Charlie Kirk and the Trump people were all, and like in all of the operatives throughout social media, were all trying to say like, this guy's not right wing, don't look into it, whatever it is, which is factually true. They did, that was the spin from the beginning.
Yeah.
Got fired. And he was like, this is the worst attack on free speech that's ever. It's like, where the fuck were you when students were doing Palestine protests and the Biden administration was all behind places like Colombia, just ruining people's lives and targeting students?
And then after that, like Trump straight up abducting people for it.
Yeah, and opening the door for people to, for ICE to just abduct people and use that as that kind of wedge point to expand its powers, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's no memory.
Probably wouldn't even make a top 10 biggest breaches of free speech in the last year. But
wasn't it under Obama that like the most journalistic sources ever got arrested and like detained?
Prior to Trump, yeah.
Like this has been happening for a while. The structure has been there for a long time, right?
But I mean, you can kind of see how someone turns into Chris Hayes in an environment like that. And like, this is not to give them any sort of inch of good faith credit, but I think it's probably informative and something that we should be mindful of is that there is a very strong incentive now for these people to play ball, to be obsequious little stenographers for the state because they don't want to lose their livelihood, or in some cases they might be looking at it and thinking, God, if I say the wrong thing, they might just shoot me in the head. And that's no longer an outlandish thing to think. That's no longer a thing that is completely beyond the pale to imagine. And so the condition then worsens because, and again, I don't want to give them any credit, but I can see that sort of death spiral logic for them of going, it could happen. It could literally happen to any of us if we don't toe the line. That's the crazy thing with Jimmy Kimmel, because everyone was talking about it. I was at work. I didn't really get a chance to watch the clip, and so like I was a bit late, and I went back and I watched the clip. And I was like, man, what has he said about Charlie Kirk that was so disrespectful? He doesn't say anything disrespectful about Charlie Kirk. In fact, if anything, he's kind of like a little bit memorializing. He's gentle, he's kind, he doesn't say anything positive about it. He's like, well, this awful thing happened, and then he makes a joke at Trump's expense, and that's all it is. It's literally just, he goes, look, Trump doesn't give a shit. Trump, he plays the clip of Trump being asked, how are you doing, how are you keeping up, and Trump starts going on about the ballroom, and then he makes a joke about how Trump, the stage of grief that he's in is renovations or something like that. The fourth stage of grief is construction, which is it's like I said, it's the first funny joke that Jimmy Kimmel's made in years, but it's literally the only critical thing that's said is at the expense of Trump, and so you'll notice. And then I went back and I started looking at some of the sort of right-wing tweets about it. And they're all talking about disrespectful to the memory of Charlie Kirk, and not one of them is playing the clip. Not one of them is providing a quote, because he doesn't actually say anything disrespectful about Charlie Kirk. All he does is make a joke at the expense of Trump, and now Trump has used the power of the FCC to lean on his producers and get him fired. And it's very clearly just a case of state repression of free speech, unambiguous.
Yeah, and it's
an actual real free speech crisis, unlike the sort of
and not they're not helping their case by Trump, I think a few months ago, maybe a bit longer, saying we're going for Jimmy Kimmel next. Like, right? Like, it's really difficult to unpick just how intentionally divorced from reality what do you even call that kind of web of outriding kind of far right PR bots? Like that, there's not really like an effective way to describe them, but the way that it's so clear that they're just like, okay, here's our chance. We're gonna lie about it. This is what we're utilizing to crush free speech right now. And it doesn't matter like what was actually said. It doesn't matter what people say. We're going to say that they said it. we're going to say that these things have happened. We're going to try and weaponize like this tragedy, air quotes, to destroy careers, destroy and threaten anyone who's speaking out. If they even so much as go near this, and maybe even if they don't. One of the really amusing ones I saw yesterday was Ben Stiller spoke out about Jimmy Kimmel to say it was wrong, and some far right freak quote tweeted him to say like, but you didn't even say anything about Charlie Kirk. So like now even the negative is enough to get people attacked. Like not saying the right thing, not being obsequious enough. It's not just like you said the wrong thing. It's you didn't actively and openly toe the line and get on the train with us, which is I think they're like they don't know what they're doing, and I think they're moving too fast, and I think it's going to fuck them up. But never underestimate the ability of powerful people in the US to just go, well, I guess we're fascists now.
Yeah,
This would make sense. Sorry.
Oh, no, you go.
But this would make sense if any of these entertainers had any sense of solidarity or ability to organize with each other. Like if they actually communicated with each other and said, okay, let's just not go on our shows anymore. And just went blank. Like if they were able to undertake any sort of industrial action, you know what I mean? And it's not like they're living paycheck to paycheck. They get millions, right? You know, like if you're on MSNBC and you're Rachel Maddow, you're earning like a couple million a year, right? So
minimum,
you know, and which somehow it's making money, even though the average age of the viewers is like 70. And yet they won't do that. And I think we say they're overplaying their hand, but I almost think that they're just pushing the envelope. They're actually discovering with glee that there's no amount of envelope pushing that they can do, which won't be too far. Not because people aren't pushing back against it, but because public opinion doesn't matter. And none of the people who are in power who are able to make this matter, whose opinion matters, like the professional class of responsible men that runs American society, isn't going to do anything about it. And what was kind of interesting about that negative, I think, is it's exactly that, right? Is they were given an inch and they've realized they can take a mile. From the moment that it happened, people like fucking Zoran Mamdani was saying, oh, Charlie Kirk dying is such a tragedy. You're the candidate for running for New York City mayor. You don't have to fucking say something about some dumbass loser like YouTuber. Shut the fuck up. You don't have to say anything. The moment that you say something and you get on side by being like, this is a tragedy, and joining the chorus of every other fucking liberal doing it, is you giving license to the fascists to be like, we've got them. We've got them now. Right? Because liberals care about being hypocrites. Fascists don't. They have the right to play, as Jean-Paul Sartre said, right? But liberals don't. They don't have the right to play. If you call them out on hypocrisy, they hate it. So if you give them an inch, they will take that all the way to the right.
Yeah. And I think that's you've really touched on it there, because there's been this sort of weirdly smug response from people sort of semi-left or centrist who've gone like, oh, see, we told you the college campus protests, the free speech stuff, we told you that if you do this. And it's just like you realize like they didn't need precedent. They're not concerned about hypocrisy. So like when we were making these when we were humoring the Charlie Kirks of this world, who claimed that not giving him a giant pedestal to spread fascist hate speech on was in some way a breach of free speech, we were giving them license to then create a set of scenarios where we can only be hypocrites about it. And I was saying, no, actually it should just be fine that we as the public provide that sort of criticism. And that people feel like they have to respond to that public pressure, because that is not the great free speech issue that the right was making it out to be, and for some reason people on the left were making it out to be. The idea that a bunch of college students were holding protests saying we don't want fascists on campus giving talks was not a free speech issue. And this whole like smug, weird, like I don't even want to call it a victory lap. It's like a loser lap. It's like a haha, we lost and I knew we would lose in this fashion lap, impressing no one. That was never the actual free speech issue. The real free speech issue is now what we see, which is a literal government crackdown on free speech. They're putting people away in internment camps. They're disappearing people. I don't know if you saw the news from Alligator Alcatraz, but the families have been reporting that their family members just haven't shown up. They haven't turned up. They haven't found them. They're not coming home. And so we're actually in this real crisis of free speech, and they're going, yes, this is just like when students said they didn't want Jordan Peterson to come to school, and it's a completely different scenario. But for some reason, people can't see that. They don't see that. For them, students holding a protest outside a building is exactly the same as masked thugs kidnapping people out of their homes and most likely killing them. It seems like probably. I hate to say that because it sounds like cooker stuff, but like, where are they?
I think like this is one of those really, not to do a loser lap, but it was one of those really obvious things. And no, I'm not near that kind of center left either. But people have been castigated for years now. I mean, like since 2016, when people are like, this is probably going to end up with fascism if like the US doesn't do something about this guy, right? Like that is what they want. That is what like the intent is, and it's the track they want to put themselves on. And alongside that, you have these kind of claims around free speech, but this increasing state and far right violence in particular. And everyone's saying, like, you're making things worse and worse and worse. Like, something will give at some stage, and there will be quote unquote political violence, right? It is going to happen, and everyone's like, "Oh, stop saying you're going to do political violence!" Right? The people on the right wing, and we've seen it happen here, right? You've seen David Seymour, for example. When people have talked about, if you try and like suppress large sections of society here, that's probably going to lead to some civil unrest. It's like, oh, they're threatening civil unrest. This is always the response of wannabe fascists, right? They're like, because then we can crack down on it later.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and they've had to fabricate this wholesale, completely fictional story about the shooter having left-wing motivations because they're using it as this kind of false pretext. And
but it doesn't matter what it was, right?
Yeah. So for so long, so many leftists have been like, oh, we can't give them the pretext. We can't give them the ammo. It's like, it doesn't matter. If we don't give them the ammo, they will conjure it from thin air. They will completely fabricate a set of motives for this shooter so that they can crack down on the prescribed groups that they want to crack down on. They're not going to crack down on gropers. That's their friends. So when there's a groper shooter with slightly incoherent politics, but very clearly from a specific group of people that have right-wing politics, we're just going to wholesale imagine that they have left-wing politics and then announce that we're cracking down on left-wing people, because that again, they don't need pretext. They don't care about hypocrisy.
Yeah, and for the last decade, I guess, people have been like, "Oh, don't go to big protests. Don't be confrontational with counter-protesters. Don't do significant actions against the far right because, as you say, that'll give them the pretext to really crack down on us, and you make everything worse for everybody." And then like this happens, and they're like gonna try and prescribe Antifa, which doesn't exist as an organization, and is clearly gonna be used to just crack down on anyone. They're just gonna be like, "Oh yeah, this person's Antifa." Like as you say, lose a lap.
Yeah, now's not the time to be smug.
Yeah, you're getting to the point where you have to fight. Like,
yeah.
Well done, because you didn't fight before, because of a range of liberal hesitancy, reliance on institutional shaming, safetyism, etc., etc., etc. In the end, it was a failure to have solidarity and to organize with the most vulnerable who have been attacked for years. And now that the Jimmy Kimmels of the world are being targeted, that's when we're starting to see some other people who have class solidarity with him start to say, oh, this isn't too great.
From the start, they knew that they wanted to try to make the trans link, right? This is something they were constantly trying to keep alive. Now we've got the world's worst Christopher Moltisanti level script from an FBI agent just being
Incredible.
like, hello, I'm going to do crimes. These are all the specific things I'm checking off. I love you, my trans girlfriend, and her just being like, okay, lol. Like, what?
I think my favorite part about that note that isn't getting kind of noticed is that the shooter, all the details the shooter lists is stuff that the FBI has found.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So that there's no new information in the letter.
No.
They only mention, and the best part was when the supposed girlfriend says, how long have you been planning this? And the response is, for about a week, I believe. Like, what do you mean you believe?
I'm just trying to construct my mens rea in real time. Like,
I believe.
The objective, reasonable person looking at the facts would be able to see the subjective element of the offense. Like, it's just so crazy.
Yeah, I without a doubt, it went like this. ChatGPT, create us a note.
Yeah.
It must include.
These are the
Yeah.
details of the crime that we're trying to.
Well, yeah, I think
stand
so
up.
because
Yeah.
it's pretty much spelled correctly, and I'm not sure that all the federal agents can spell anymore. So, I mean, not to do the liberal
Well,
like, haha, they're dumb thing, but like, they are.
I'm not
Like,
pretty dumb.
that's kind of and it's not like a moral and an immoral thing for them to be illiterate, which they are. It's that it's so embarrassing that we're getting dunked on by the dog and Airbud. Like, it's so embarrassing.
And it's important, yeah, because there's people say, oh, well, you know, we shouldn't just let them off the hook for being stupid. We shouldn't, that bumbling empire thing, people say, oh, you got to be careful of it. It's like, no, you can be really stupid and still be incredibly evil and menacing. So yeah, this is not it's not in any way to sort of let them off the hook, but they are pretty dense, and it's just what we're really seeing is just how much money and power can make up for being a fucking moron. Because no one's going to make the argument that Trump is clever, and yet he gets to do whatever he wants because he has the money and power. Because you can overcome anything, any kind of cognitive impairment in the case of Trump, as long as you have the resources available to you and the army of toadies around you.
And someone like Charlie Kirk, who lacked talent, is somebody who could get by just selectively editing YouTube videos and having millions and millions of dollars from large money donors behind him, right? Like, this is how Toilet Paper USA works. Like, was it literally just like they had money. The memes were so bad that in 2016 or something, maybe even earlier than that, people would share them with edits just being like making fun of how stupid they were, you know, like this is how bad that kind of messaging was, but it didn't need to be. And in fact, he's finally fulfilled his God-given purpose by dying because he couldn't do anything useful while he was alive. I think what's kind of interesting about the Charlie Kirk thing is, and I hate that we're talking about some loser nobody YouTuber, right? Like it's so
well,
gross
don't think about it as talking about him, as talking about like the event, right? Like
the tulpa that has been conjured from
and I'm
it.
going to say, if you're going to shoot somebody, don't do somebody who's quite so too big. It's the thing. But what I wanted to say is that from a practical standpoint, if you want to talk about fighting back, like I don't think propaganda that did is particularly effective. However, killing a lot of these people en masse actually would work to some extent because you would cow them. So that is something which is effective. I don't think it is the preferred option because it shows a kind of lack of it doesn't help the public to understand that there is like public support behind this because they own the means of distribution of information and control the channels totally, right? So there is a sense in which, and we're seeing that that's why this crackdown is happening with Kimmel, etc., is because they can just say, they can make you feel crazy like it isn't popular, even though people keep getting popped off, right? So I'm not sure that it's necessarily the most effective tactic. And for that reason, I'm not saying that I endorse it. But just from from a kind of dispassionate point of view, that is a method which would work. To cow these people because they are cowards. The slightest pushback terrifies them. Something like what Kimmel said is something which got on Trump's nerves. And it's so, I mean, you pointed this perfectly out, Ollie. It was so mild as a criticism and as a joke, but he just couldn't stand it.
Well, this is the thing, right? All the other people who are saying that they support Kimmel on Twitter or wherever they are, wherever these freaks live, you're saying, oh, they could all still go silent, right? They could just all not show up to their shows. Or they could all go on and just like do the aristocrats with Trump as the butt of the joke every day. You know, they could just overwhelm the system. Like that would be the way to do that. You don't need to do like more crazy stuff at this point. Like I think if nothing else, this is showing the cracks and their power.
Yeah, I guess I was just gonna say Jon Stewart did do that. He did the episode, the special episode, but it's like I'm so cynical now. I'm just like, I mean, does this even matter? Does this do anything? I don't know.
I don't like that actually, because if we look at what he was doing, the joke was like, haha, I'm complying in advance. It's like, okay, but the messaging that you're doing, even though this is satire, is actually, I am afraid to say something and I won't get in trouble for this. It's such a soft satire, which actually strokes the ego of Trump.
Did he in the end? Did he break character at the end of it? I didn't watch the whole thing.
I was hoping that not the clip that I watched on YouTube, but on Twitter, which was like 10 minutes long or whatever. He doesn't break character.
Okay, because that's what I was like, that would have been cool. Maybe is he do it for a little bit and then go, you know what, fuck it, and
then just point out all these things to people, but nobody's speaking the truth. Like showing, haha, isn't it funny how I'm terrified to say anything? Isn't actually effective satire when that's all they're all doing. Fallin did the same thing. I'm pretty sure John Oliver, that jack off, is going to do the same thing. Like none of them are actually going to do it. right? None of them are actually going to speak any sort of truth or lay out any of the facts.
Yeah,
because
they should.
Because it's much easier for them to do the cowardly satire by being like, haha, isn't it funny we're kind of like North Korea, whatever the American imagination of that media is like, right? What are we, a bunch of Asians, is a much easier satire for John fucking Stewart to do.
I want to backtrack slightly because there was something you said earlier that I thought was really noteworthy. But no, it was just about the control of what information is available to the public, and I think it's, for me, one of the things I think is really interesting is I think this is the big lesson they took away from Luigi Mangione, was if you let the public have the conversation on their own, they're not going to give you the outcome you want. They're going to be having conversations you don't like the timbre of. And so with Luigi, everyone was like, fuck yeah, this rocks. We need more of this. This is so funny. This is so cool. Or I don't care. The overwhelming public response was that. And it's very clear that what they've seen here is with Kirk was a lot of people, a huge number of people going, yeah, like I just don't care that this happened. And so and this time, instead of letting it run roughshod, they've kind of, I guess, they've been a bit prepared, and they've said, no, we're going to crack down on that. We're going to start getting you fired for saying that. We're going to start cracking down on any broadcasters that give even a sniff of doing that. We're going to just nip this one in the bud. We're not going to let the public have that conversation because it's not going the direction we want it to, and we're realizing that nobody really, truthfully, the layperson, the average person, does not give a shit that Charlie Kirk got his head blown off. And in some cases, I would say more often than not, people think it was funny or good that it happened.
Yeah, and you've been hearing that, right? Like, you've been seeing a lot of people say that who are just normal people. What's really, I guess, actually kind of wild to me is the straight line being run basically by, like, just a whole bunch of Western politicians and media. Like Keir Starmer coming in and saying, oh, blah, 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 Charlie Kirk, you're talking about Mamdani, Simone. Like, why are you all doing this? Why, like, who gives a shit?
Well, we know why Keir Starmer's doing it.
Starmer's pretty obvious,
he's in the UK, right? Like,
but like, it's shocking that somebody who is just so, and the thing about Mamdani is that he's not even a national politician, so why?
Yeah,
exactly. That's
it's
so perplexing.
It's just like all these pollsters, everyone going, oh yeah, everyone, Charlie Kirk is in the news. Everyone has to say something about it. You have to say something, otherwise, blah 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 blah. You won't get your donors, and you're just like,
if there was coordination from the Democratic Party, from the top down, to be like, we will never mention his name, that would be really funny, and it would work. Like, you just don't talk about it. Every time a reporter asks you a question, you pivot to something else, like the stump speech.
Again,
right?
It's giving an inch. I think one of the good things that happened, maybe, is that David Seymour here in New Zealand tried to do something
moment of silence.
Some dumb shit, and then Nationals like, nah, like,
we're too good for this. Like, imagine, like, they have more dignity than the average American liberal as the National Party is to go, you know what, like, this is not something that
who is that?
Guy?
Like, because
who?
That's the thing. No one knew who this was. Like, I think David Seymour was trying to say, oh yeah, many New Zealanders have felt this in their hearts or some shit. Most New Zealanders don't know who the fuck you're talking about.
And that's the thing, because I found myself getting into disputes a little bit with like conservative family members and talking about this particular topic. And what became very, very quickly clear from the conversation was that I knew significantly more about Charlie Kirk than they did.
Yeah,
I guess it's back to that same thing of, like, they don't need a precedent. They don't need an example, because they will just conjure one out of midair. They didn't need a martyr because they can just make one. They can just imagine one.
And
I'm rotating a martyr in my mind right now. And I think the fact that they were ready to go is one of the biggest things, right? Like, they were ready to go with quote unquote antifa, like, prescribing, or whatever the equivalent is, anti-fascist groups, and all trans people. Like, they were ready to go with this because
they knew that something was going to happen, right?
This is their victim of the day, of the year, of the Project 2025, right? Or like, what, once gay marriage passed, they're like, okay, this has got to be the target. This is the minority that we can peel off the easiest, because those people, like, don't necessarily know that much about what it is to be trans or whatever it is. We can demonize them pretty easy, pretty quick, smart. And so they're hammering this home because this is their way of doing it. And I think it's
one of those things, I think, like, if they didn't have a plan on this before Thomas Matthew Crooks, the guy who tried to shoot Trump, they probably just had like a little dossier sitting around that says like, okay, if this happens again,
Yeah.
the first time this happens, and it was inevitable. It was always going to happen. You create a boiling pot like America, it's going to happen.
Oh, I guess you're threatening violence by just even suggesting
Yeah,
that.
but it's like someone said, like they had a folder there that said, here's what we do, here's the media blackout, here's how we do the total control of the narrative, here's how we bully anybody who tries to step in line, and here's the groups that we are going to try and pin us on, and it doesn't matter what the shooter's politics are. Doesn't matter. And chances are they will be just like the guy who tried to shoot Trump. They'll just be some weirdo internet basement dwelling groper again, but that doesn't matter. Because we know who we're going to pin this on.
And somehow UK and New Zealand politicians
Fall
are
for it.
also going to immediately coordinate. You know, like it's so ludicrous. And the way in which they've had to just activate, like even in the New Zealand poll space, right? No one gives a shit about us. Like what a fucking backwater. And
Although I will say, never ascribe to coordination what can easily be ascribed to
just following a pursuit.
Opportunism.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Exact
But
chance to also win some points.
yeah.
The David Seymour thing didn't feel coordinated. It felt like he was jumping on a moment and then getting his nose rubbed in it, which was great. It was a really funny little moment that he just like tried his hardest to turn it into a thing, and no one gives a shit.
Because like the thing is that the media is primed for it here to listen to anything that David Seymour wants it to do, right?
True.
But nationalist isn't necessarily if it's that. Because the thing is that what he's saying, I was trying to think of the equivalent. It's like I suppose if someone like who's like somebody who's less well, it's like Steve Abel from the Green Party was just like fucking name me a streamer. Hassan Pakir or something like that, like has been shot, and then he's like, we need a National Day of Remembrance. Everybody would be like, who? Like
Actually, more people are likely
like
to
Chris
know.
Hipkins would be like, you're gonna have to like do a flow chart of this for me.
They've killed H Bomber guy, and you have to...
they blew H Bomber guy smooth. It was actually the plagiarist kid or whatever that he made.
We're so deep in the weeds. No one understands what you're talking about.
Has anyone else kind of come to terms with the fact of like, hey, I probably can never go back to America?
Yeah,
Don't say that.
Yeah. I mean, you were dicing.
I realized this the other day because like for all my foibles with the American government, it's always been a bit of a second home for me. I spent a lot of time there, and I realized the other day I was like, oh, I probably can never go back because I certainly can't go back under the current administration. They will be like, give us your phone, and I'll be like, yeah, but I feel like this. I don't know if America recovers from here. I feel like, and that's an interesting thought that the world has gotten a little bit smaller, and a part of the world that is kind of special to me that I used to have a lot of love for, and still do in terms of the American people and the American land. It's a beautiful country aside from the people who run it. It's just kind of gone now, and I don't really see any way that they pull up from this crisis. I don't I understand that maybe Trump could lose the next election, but I think it's also entirely possible or borderline likely that there is no other election.
Early Baron Trump ascending to the throne, right? Like,
well, just like, or his sclerotic half-dead dad just kind of stumbling on through, because who's going to stop them at this point? It's very clear, and no one has it in them, and it's also very clear that all gloves are off in terms of manufacturing consent and manufacturing crisis. We sort of gently alluded to this possibility, but that they had some involvement in the shooting of Charlie Kirk for the sake of, it's been talked about, for the sake of hiding more insidious things like the crushing and suppression of the Epstein files. It was a very convenient timing for them. Again, I'm saying don't ascribe to coordination what can just be opportunism, but they know now. It's like you said, that we've given them the inch and they're taking miles, and we've seen them lie and lie and lie about things like Gaza. We've seen them lie and lie and lie about recently the sort of Trump medical crisis thing. We see that nothing is beyond them. We see them lying about this shooter and just making up stories. What's to stop them now from just like manufacturing some kind of wartime event, some actual real 9/11 tear false flag event that allows them to then declare emergency power and cancel an election? And I think that's not just a possible outcome, but a reasonably likely outcome. Because
they've said it already. They've already said Trump's like, there won't be elections again, right? Like, and you're like, oh yeah, you're just joking. No,
They
No.
can't risk ceding what they've got now back to the Democrats because they're wildly unpopular. Their approval ratings are through the floor. If they had a real free and fair election at this point, one that they didn't tamper with, which, by the way, remember when Trump said that we tampered with voting machines? Like, if they had a real free and fair election at the next election and they lost it, I don't have a lot of confidence in the Democrats, but I could see the Democrats rolling back some of their progress, and I don't see them wanting that, and I don't see them fearing. Refusing them that opportunity. I don't think they're afraid to simply seize control of the nation at this
They've
point.
already started arresting state lawmakers, right?
Yeah, and they're arresting students, they're arresting citizens, they're deporting citizens to countries that they're not from, and that to me just says, oh, we realize we can, like you said, we can get away with anything. There is no limit to what we will get away with, and no limit to what we can convince the public that they believe. And it is frightening what the public believe because you see their supporters just going along and saying, yeah, well, it's okay. I mean, they were terrorists. They were a problem. We're happy with the fact that Trump's arresting these people because they were evil. And so if they can do that, then they can surely cancel an election to no more than a whimper from the left.
Two small rays of hope. One is that incompetence we were talking about earlier, right? They they are really struggling. They're really struggling. I think they're consistently overplaying their hand. There are still opportunities for people to wake up and go, oh, wait a second, we're fucked, and try and do something about it. And the second is that the level of manufacturing having to happen, and the spaces in which it's happening, predominantly on Twitter.com, and on Facebook, they can seem really overwhelming, but they're and ubiquitous and omnipresent, but it's completely inauthentic. And we know from what's happened with Charlie Kirk that you go offline into the real world and people are like, I don't know, I'm blissfully unaware of this stuff because that's not real. They've created it as a reality for themselves, and people get sucked into it and have their lives dominated by it, and take it back into reality. But for most people, these things don't exist. And that is hopeful to me as well.
Although my only caveat to that is that, and it seems to be, at least from my observation of the last few years of American politics, is that ignorance is every bit as good as approval. And it seems like they do this stuff despite, like, the average person maybe doesn't know, doesn't care, but that also means they maybe don't know and don't care about the noose around their own necks.
Absolutely. Let's never underrate the incompetence of the people who need to do something about encroaching fascism.
I think I was pessimistic about it before, but I realized not only was it viable, but it would inevitably happen, that they could prevent any sort of use of existing electoral infrastructure to overthrow them when the Doge stuff happened, because all of the bureaucrats were letting these like 16-year-old pimply boys into their server rooms and erase everything. They were just letting them in and not doing anything about it and complying in advance. Why? They shouldn't have done that. What? Like, it was astonishing to watch the sheer level of not only cowardice, but obsequity, I think, from American bureaucrats, and realizing, oh, they'll let them do anything. They don't have a single principled bone in any of their bodies. These people are pathetic, right?
It was a bit of a bureaucratic blitzkrieg, I think. I think what happened was they did it so quick and they showed up with armed thugs. And so a lot of these bureaucrats who had never even thought that this was a possibility, it never even occurred to them that America could have fallen to that degree. When these guys showed up, they were just like, "Oh, we're completely caught off guard."
But we saw videos of them as well, like being like, actually, I think you should please let us back in." It's like, what are you doing? There's like 200 of you standing there.
I'm trying to remember, who was it? What was the department that was really obstructionist? Was it education or something? There was one that was like, absolutely the fuck not, and they took them to court and they like locked them out of the building. And in the end, like, they sent in, like, the police came and like started smashing windows and shit. I'm trying to remember which department that was, but there was one I remember that like stood up to it and did the thing that they're supposed to do.
And then they disestablished it, right? I think it was the Department of Education.
Yeah. And I think, the DC police in tandem with like a private security company were doing that.
Yeah.
Well, that's all pretty horrific. Luckily, the economy here in little old New Zealand is doing great, and we can just buckle down and wait for it to blow over.
Do you want to know something more horrific?
Yes.
Say what you will. Nazi Germany was not an existing world unipolar superpower bestriding the entire Earth. And if America completely goes that way, which it will, it's going to be so much. Nazi Germany never had nukes. Put it that way.
Well, great. Well, that really puts it all in perspective. My life and the history of
It's
my
a
family.
feel-good Sunday.
Yeah, things are pretty bad here, but it's also pretty funny. Nicola Willis as finance minister, like
They're calling it the smoothest segue of all time.
is she the worst finance minister ever? I
That's
think
pulling
so.
that segue smooth off.
The worst finance minister ever in terms of competence, but maybe not in terms of impact, because that's just going to be Roger Douglas forever, I suspect.
Yeah, well, I mean,
That's a
Roger
hard
Douglas.
crown to ever reach for. But then here he is, fucking knifing her in the back.
Well, I think in her back because she's not doing worse, right? Like, it's so funny. Like, all this stuff is
Her
happening.
friends
Media
like,
are just like hands off. Oh no, just let Nicola Willis work. Let her do what she needs to do. Like, overtly lying to the public, hiding like
reports.
information,
Yeah.
fucking up deal after deal, like pushing us further into recession than we like anyone had predicted, making a whole bunch of job cuts to the public service, giving all the money to the and tax cuts to landlords and other rich people at the expense of everyone else. And the media's been like, oh, I don't know if we should put any pressure on her though. And then Roger Douglas comes along and says, no, you haven't fucked it up enough. And the media's like, all right, time to go at her.
No, I think the media pressure started ever so slightly before Dougie got on board. There was definitely
Oh,
a
when
bit.
Ruth Richardson was on board first. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, there was definitely like people sort of turning up the heat, going, "What is actually going on here? Like, we are in a recession, we are in a cost of living crisis. We're not getting any of the sort of promises that were made. None of them are being delivered. There was definitely a rising temp. It's just sort of for some reason taken this long. I guess because there's been other exciting things to be talking about in the news, but it's taken this long for them to really go, "Hey, this is actually getting a bit annoying. My groceries cost more than double what they did before you guys came in."
It's not good, folks. She's very bad. She's been a very bad girl. I'm not going to take that any further. I'm sorry.
It's pretty good. Pretty good one.
Good
I have to do
choices.
penance
But
for this.
Better choices than earlier.
Oh, no. Not
the
about the
voice was
quality of the
great.
impression,
Content was
just
getting
about
a little
not wanting to be possessed at this particular time.
Yeah.
It's...
Yeah,
what
I
is
mean,
they able to say? They said we we overestimated GDP by a few billion. Like, what?
which is really funny because that's actually something that was pointed out to them in their pre-election materials, was that they had made the same mistake. And
Didn't they just make up that New Zealanders were spending more money overseas? Like, they just decided to pick a number or something. What was going on there?
Well, I think it was exactly that, because there was those big gaps in their projections when they were putting out their pre-election materials, and they were like, "Here's our financial plan," and people just kept going, "Hey, where are all these missing figures?" And I think somewhere between there and after getting elected, they were like, "Well, we'll just fill the gap," and they literally just were like, "Oh, we'll just chuck something in there. It must just be women be shopping on Amazon or something." I don't know. Like, that was their kind of like first draft, and then for some reason it made it through first draft into the final output.
I like Nicola Willis sitting down and being like, what do women be doing? Like, shopping. It is as well that it kind of does show that if that is an increase in GDP, it kind of shows how silly it is as a measure of your country's
An
health.
absurd
It's like
one.
that's
Oh.
money which is leaving the country. Like,
Don't get me. Yeah, don't even get me started.
but it's economic
GDP is a
activity. So
general-
clearly there's something good going on there. The same as like the value of the shares of a company going up or something like that is clearly like good for the economy, quote unquote, as like a discrete Weberian thing.
Do we think like so? There's some kind of
No, we don't think, Kyle. We're on the left.
oh yeah, true. We just act, right? Like we're ready to go. All our organizations are prepared. Everyone's acting in solidarity.
They're flying us around on private jets to do protests.
Yeah, I wish. Luxon, there was some kind of up in the air, like, is he going to support? Because there were always calls from the right. I want to be clear again. Always calls from the right that were getting publicized that Nicola Willis had to go. And then he came out and said, no, full support. She's the hardest worker. She's the best finance minister ever. Really going a bit over the top, I would say. Things are only going to get worse, right?
I'm gonna again. I can never say a nice thing about Luxon because he had a golden opportunity there to actually win a few points and do something savvy for the first time in his entire political career, which is throw her under the bus. And he could have really like clothed himself in glory by doing that, and instead he's come out and just been like, "No, I'm tying myself to the mast of this fucking sinking ship." Good one, man. Awesome.
And then had John Key
Right there.
kind of come in as well to
Just
be like,
absolutely,
actually,
yeah.
the Reserve Bank shouldn't be independent.
I'm just imagining him pulling along and being like, "Whoa, I just looked in the room for the first time since getting elected. There's neoliberalism going on here. What?"
Yeah, never underestimate the capacity of Luxon to miss an opportunity. But right there and then, he could have actually done something ruthless and clever, and it didn't occur to him
Yeah.
because he's just a vacuous.
I can smell the fiat currency on your breath as you lean forward.
But I mean, this is what like will collapse a government, right? You would think. If it gets much worse, like stuff is really, really rough for people right now. And we say, not for everybody, not for the people who are already well off, well and sorted. The people who have got theirs have been funneled more wealth by this government. But the numbers are really heavily turning against this government in terms of where people think the country's going.
I mean, they've been bad. If they're not careful, what could happen is they could lose the election to another useless Labour coalition that does nothing.
Uh-oh.
I can't imagine how much worse it's going to be when Labour wins and then loses the following election.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it
doing the
as
same thing.
completely Starmerite like kind of situation now, right?
They're trying. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know if Hipkins has that. Like, Starmer doesn't have a belief in his body and he's totally charismaless, but like he's an evil person. Do you know what I mean? Like he's got some kind of bloodthirst to him. It just doesn't show. And I think that Hipkins doesn't necessarily have, like, there's some part of him which still exists as a kind of heart, right? I don't know if he's capable of doing the Starmer thing.
No, I think you're right. I think there is a very thinly veiled rage underneath the surface of Starmer that he's a hate-filled man that has to pretend otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think there's a Hipkins is more of a empty vessel. He's a Luxon kind of.
I mean more in terms of they come in, they make things actively worse by doing more austerity, the same as UK Labour has been doing, and then it leads to New Zealand First becoming a reformer-like and pushing economic populism alongside outright fascism.
It's making good ideas look bad by being like, we're going to do a capital gains tax finally, and it's the worst possible version of it that helps nobody while not doing anything else with the tax system, right? And also like them saying just like, I mean, like, and this is always what they do, right? Is that they take something which seems like it's an all right idea, and then they just do the bad version of it, like Kiwi Bank. Like the idea of having a nationalized investment bank for the country is a really good idea. Making it a fucking state-owned enterprise where it's like you got to operate like a profit-making bank is the dumbest fucking idea I've ever heard in my life. And like they keep doing the bad versions of the good thing. Like left groups will make something popular by talking about a real issue like child poverty. And then Labour will get in power and be like, we're going to do this thing that everyone else has done the hard yards, like doing the legwork, bring into the public consciousness. And then they do the worst version of it. Like every student organization in New Zealand since the early 90s has been like, we need to make it fees free again. And Labour comes in and is like, we're for students, we're fees free for the first year, some conditions apply. Like, and then it just becomes a policy which looks like it's bad and does nothing. And that's all Labour ever does.
And it's easy to steal
other people's work and then do the bad version of it and make it unpopular.
And it's exactly that thing I guess we sort of talked about earlier where they do, because I think I understand the pathology behind it a little bit, having taught. I know a lot of sort of Labour diehards and tragics in that space, and I think that the thinking is that they think they're doing a sort of real politic. They imagine themselves doing this sort of like savvy compromise, because for them they still think you have to play the game. And it comes back to what we were talking about before. They have this imaginary set of precedents and norms that they have to uphold, and these sort of like hypocrisies they have to avoid when dealing with conservatives. And so they go, well, conservatives didn't play nice and ball with us, but we should play ball with them because we are beholden to the rules, and thus we should compromise on our policies and put in place restrictions on ourselves that accommodate the needs of conservatives and neuter our own policies. And so they do that because they imagine that they're playing this sort of fair game, but they don't realize you just don't have to do that. It doesn't matter that the opposition gets angry at you when you put these policies in. You put in the lukewarm version of it, and they're still going to roll it back when they're in power. So you might as well do the good version of it and gain all the wonderful public support that you get from that. Because you've got to remember, I know that you're spending all day in Parliament with these guys. You have to look them in the eye. They're the ones you're really thinking about. But ultimately, the ones you need to be appealing to aren't in that room with you. It doesn't matter that someone across the aisle said something a bit mean to you in that house. That's your job. You eat that, and then you go and you do the thing the public wants, and that's actually going to keep winning you election.
There is a component which I think is that they are, deep down, I think they're afraid that they're not as talented as they think they are. Because if you actually do policy, you have to do something. And the thing is that these people, like the West Wing brain people, fetishize talent and they fetishize the ability to do policy. Like the West Wing imagines a world not only in which this stuff works, but in which liberals are smart people, and they're not. So I think what's really what really terrifies them about doing anything is that if they actually constructed a policy which was meaningful and had to work universally, they would have to actually do something, and they would have to have some kind of talent behind them. And I think that they're afraid that deep down they don't. So they don't really do anything except for tinker. Like if you rewrote the whole tax code, that's a Herculean task. It's a necessary task, but you have to have very, very talented people doing that, right? And I think that they're afraid that they can't.
I think that answers a lot of the questions about the issues they've talked about in the whole podcast, it's just
timidity. We have a very, very bold global fascist movement and a very, very timid resistance.
Yeah. Let's wrap it because I have to go. Where can people find you, Simone?
Oh, I'm sorry, don't.
Okay, cool. Moving on.
But thank you for letting me be on. I hope I get better.
And Ollie, thank you for joining us again. Where can people find you?
Yeah, again, just leave me alone. Don't talk to me ever.
All right. And you can find us at 1 of 200 website on any podcast app. Share, like, subscribe. Thank you again to our audience for putting up with us. Hopefully this has been a breath of fresh air because we're actually talking about things and not trying to tiptoe around them. You should hear what we fucking cut from this episode. We'll catch you next time.
1 of 200 is like the early edition of podcasts. It's like if you want to know the news that's going to happen in 2 weeks, listen to this podcast.
Try 5 years sometimes. It's
5 years.
It's actually horrific. All right. That's 1 of 200. Catch you midweek, I think, for another episode. We'll see you next time.
If artificers are then I'm living a pointless life, but learning all your lessons. Fucking politics, there's no distinction. The road's upon now. It's paved with good intentions, and I'll admit that I'm at a loss for what to say when they quote us as a cost we ought to stay. 'Cause I live amongst the people every day. This vindictive, forgetful fucking rain. It feels like we're on the road to hell.